I'm going to be reading another holy book today. Um, it is the Holy Vedas. Um, Technically multiple books, depending on how you get it. A lot of stuff surrounding this, just that doesn't really. Because I don't know if it's really a holy book, but it's about the closest thing I can find. So, kind of quick background is it's part of the like Hindu, Brahmanistic tradition, the Vedic traditions. Hence it being the Vedas. So it has the Rig, Yajur, Sama, and oh god, Atharva. Again, I'm really bad at saying these. Um, all four Vedas. The first three were written together, and the fourth one was added a little bit later. They're really just like prayers for different people who do certain rituals to different gods. So like, it is. Let me. Yep. So the first one is for the people who invoke the gods and prepare the sacrificial ground. And then the second one is for the choristers who sang. The third is the reciters, and then the fourth was just the Brahmana overseers. And so they talk to Agni, Igni, all sorts of different Mitravaruna, some of these I can't even pronounce. All sorts of different gods, and that's basically the whole book. So I'll be really honest straight out of the bat. I think a lot of the older Vedic traditions have a lot of cool wisdom and a lot of cool stuff, and obviously, I'm doing a total bastardization of it. But they have like a whole branch of evolution that's really cool as far as the Brahmins, the Vedics, and then to the karmic schools, which I can never pronounce. It's like Svarati. Really got work my pronunciation, honestly. And so just kind of all sorts of stuff as far as like Hindu stuff, different schools of Vedic thought, just the vast clusterfuck that Hinduism is, as well as what am I missing? I just was gonna say something. Oh, and then like the yoga traditions and stuff like that. So a lot of very diverse traditions. And I mean the influence is just absurd. The reach it has. So for that reason, I kind of tried to read this. This is the oldest considered holy book of any Hindu tradition. Um, I didn't really like it. I'll be honest. I liked a lot of the traditions a lot, and I like a lot of the stuff it has to offer. But like, this doesn't need to be that long of a video. This is basically just a ton of stuff for worshiping, which is my most interesting part of religion to me personally. A lot of it is repetitive. A lot of it is just niche and you need a whole lot of people to do, which maybe could be interesting. There isn't a whole lot of wisdom. Some of the stuff is multiple times death to my enemies and stuff I'm not really a fan of. Definitely seems a lot more archaic. But you'll see a lot of the inspiration. So I think if you were trying to actually practice the ancient tradition, this is important. I think to get a little bit of insight of where they were coming from, who they were, and what they were doing, this is really important. Outside of that, it really isn't. Um, I think my favorite was probably the last Veda because it was had a little bit different feel to it. All in all, I think it just depended on the god. Some of the verses were better, and some were just. I really struggled to read it. I really, really, this was really hard for me to finish. I was pretty bored for most of it. Um, so if I had to give it like a vibe thing, I give it like a five average. A few things I didn't like and a little archaic stuff, but there was some other cool stuff I really thought with the descriptions, and they talk about just very cool descriptions of like there's one I just something about the color of a peacock and some really cool descriptive words I was just reading. And then so they do it's a lot of very cool like insight to like kind of who they are and their gods and stuff. So it's not bad. So yeah, like I said, vibes I'll give it a 5 out of 10 if you remember my kind of my ranking thing. And then but obviously vibes doesn't really matter. Um Logic. There isn't a lot of logic in my sense because all the gods kind of contradict. And so that pantheistic stuff, unless you're doing it as like a Jungian symbol, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. That's not really fair to say though. Just say, oh, that's not logical. There's obviously that leap of faith and believing in a deity, but I think there's more to it than that. I think for logic, I'd put it at a four. Or, no, no, no. I'm gonna put it at a three. It's not that logical to me, as well as um, it's not logical, and I also think This is not what I want to be doing with my time, and I don't think anyone should really be doing it. Now, again, as always with my videos, I'm not trying to slander people. I mean, I don't think there's very many, especially not that be seeing these videos that practice this stuff. So I'm not trying to disrespect. I'm also a little butthurt because I bought this brand new, and like one of the pages like ripped out a corner, which is like ridiculous. And I probably should have just sent it back, but I have to do it all the time when I order books. So I'm getting kind of sick of it. For consistency, I'd probably give it even worse score than a 3, like a 1 or a 2, maybe a 2. I mean, because again, the problem with this stuff doesn't necessarily flaw it, but consistency when you have these different gods doesn't really make sense because some of them overlap what they do, and some of them would like kind of negate each other. And so there's a little bit of like that sense of like more of the easiest thing to think about is a Greek pantheon or something like that, where it's they have whims and they have like they're very sinful. They're basically just humans with power, right? So that's always a little interesting to me for as far as actually believing it. And then as far as spiritual growth and stuff and like kind of just help you as a person, I think some rituals are cool. I think they can be nice to like almost like immerse yourself in as also just like a Jungian thing. But at the same time, I think for all the other rich traditions and stuff that build off this, as well as have more valuable stuff in my opinion, I think this maybe is a nice groundwork and maybe you should read it just to learn. But I think almost as far as how can this help, it's almost losing a score because there's so much better stuff you could be doing, right? And I think it does have some stuff as far as this group practice, group incantations, as far as just doing other rituals, which ritualistic practice can be very important, as well as it does help with some more of the meditative stuff because there's some meditative aspects to that. So I don't think it's the worst thing ever. Again, it's kind of hard to score these because right now I've only finished this one, the Vedas, and then the Quran. So you know what I mean, it's kind of hard to like do a base level. Um, so there's that. And like I said, so when I'm doing these reviews, it's not the religion itself; it's just the book that's kind of based off. I'll do a separate thing with the religions, um, because they almost always grow past the book that they were most important to it. So, um, that being said, for help, I would do a 2. I mean, it's really bad, just because, again, and it's not awful. I do 2 or 3. I just don't. You know what? We'll do 3. We'll do 3. We'll do. I changed my mind. We'll just do just 3 all across the board, just because I think I had 3 and then 1 and then whatever. The reason I'm gonna kind of change my consistency scores because you know it's not 100% consistent. Um, I don't think it's just like trying to be, and that's kind of part of the thing. And I guess as far as logic too, like it's not the dumbest thing ever. I guess if you think about it, like even from a Greek standpoint, you have these gods. Like, why is it so hard to believe that people with more power are just as flawed as we are? Kind of makes sense to me. Kind of I've heard a lot of theories like just an evil god or other stuff. So I'll give 3 across the board. That's a 9 out of 30 score. Highest score was 5s. So that's obviously a fail. That's obviously bad. And then do I think this book did more harm than good? I would say yes. I think this book did more harm than good in its existence because I think. Oh, that's actually really hard to say. Maybe it didn't. Because I think I said I think there's better spiritual practices and paths than what this is kind of outlining. It's very barbaric. It's very sacrificial based. I don't think it's something that we should really bring into the modern age. Um, that being said, though, when you take it from that standpoint, it seems like yeah, it was negative. It's also just not really, I don't think that good or my cup of tea to put it in vague, crappy terms. But what kind of gets me is like, well, this was the groundwork for a lot of stuff. So like, you know what I mean? It definitely a lot of stuff was built on this. Um, like, you know what I mean? And the Upanishads, again, butchering that, I think are like, and all the others kind of stuff that came out later in this rough tradition really had some inspiration from this. So I think it's really hard to be like, oh, it was harmful. So I think if this book just stopped and the whole tradition kind of slowly died out or just stagnated, yeah, this would not be. I don't think this is where it's at. They should have gone a different route. However, I think I'll say it breaks even at the very bare minimum because what came out of this. I just think this book itself. I don't know. I think unless you're really interested in history or background of certain traditions, there's no point to read it. I don't feel any like wiser or smarter. And I did, like I said, there's some verses that were prettier, made me feel kind of cool. Like I said, I always try to pick out stuff like that. And there was even the Quran that I thoroughly did not enjoy reading. There was a couple of those. So, like I said, overall, I give this a 9 out of 30, that's a fail. I mean, yeah, but at the end of the world. And then I think I will be. I don't know what I'll be reading next, but I'll keep uploading.